Okay. All right. So hi, everyone. So far, I think I've met everybody. I've seen their photos, but I'm Laurie Schafer, and I've been a fiber artist for most of my life. And what I like to say is that I have a lingering fascination with things material, like many of you. And so that's been my theme for many of my talks, is that since childhood, I've been involved in making clothes and doing fiber art, as well as more conventional art. So I had very indulgent parents when I was young, and I was a fanatic about fashion design at the time. And so Jean Shrimpton and Twiggy were the big models at the time. And so I collected everything about the two of them. And so Twiggy came to Minneapolis to model at Dayton's, which was a large department store similar to Bergdorf Goodman. They had a couture department. It was quite incredible. So they had a fashion show, and Twiggy was there. And so my parents brought me to the fashion show, and it was quite exciting. But they announced that Twiggy would not be signing any autographs that day. And so I was quite disappointed. And then they said, but if anybody wants to see Twiggy, she'll be taking off from the Minneapolis International Airport at such and such a time. And so I begged and begged, and my parents, of course, didn't respond. But as we were driving home, my dad suddenly made the turn to the airport. And so I was walking around the airport, searching for where Twiggy would be at the international terminal. And this wonderful janitor came up, pushing his cart full of brooms, and said, "Are you looking for Twiggy?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, she's in that VIP room right there." So I planted myself outside the door and waited. And finally, her manager, Justin, came out, and he signed my drawings that I had of Twiggy. And then when he came back from the restroom, I asked him if he'd bring them into Twiggy. And so he brought them in. And a couple minutes later, her bodyguard came out, and he said, "Who's the little girl that did the drawings of Twiggy?" And I said, "It was me." And so he said, "Well, Twiggy wants you to come in and meet her." And so I went in. So I got personal autographs of Twiggy. And of course, she was only 16 at the time, and I think I was 11. And so we sat and drank Cokes together. So it was quite exciting. And so from then on, I was determined that I was going to be a fashion designer. And so from there, I went to continued on designing my own clothes, designing for some people locally. But then when I went to college, I decided to go into the fine arts instead, which ended up being a mistake. It was quite competitive. And so after 2 years, I did switch to clothing design. And so then at the University of Minnesota, I have a degree in clothing design. And I was head of the fashion shows and was very involved with that. And Minneapolis has, or I should say the Twin Cities, has an extremely active artistic and fashion design business, which always surprises people. And so there is a group in the Twin Cities that originally was called the Textile Center of Minnesota, and I helped start that group. And a lot of the weavers might know of them because they're very famous for their weaving department also. And so we put on fashion shows every year as fundraisers. So that was always quite exciting. And so I'll show you a few of my more traditional artistic endeavors, nudes, of course. And then, but fiber has always been my real love. And so I ended up switching to clothing design and went into wearable art, which was really having probably the biggest time that it's had in the history of fashion. During the 70s and 80s, it was very wild. We were covered by all sorts of magazines. And so I was fortunate enough that Ornament magazine started following me. And I will have to say that a lot of you may know that Carolyn Benish, the original editor and publisher of Ornament magazine, passed away this past week. And she was just such a wonderful mentor. She'd been battling breast cancer for quite a while. And so I started doing the American Craft Council shows, which really sent my career going. The Twin Cities, and it was the Uptown Art Fair. And it's a very large art fair in the Twin Cities. And the first year I exhibited there, I did win an award. And so then I started doing the American Craft Council shows, and Ornament magazine heard about me. So the first time I was published in a large magazine was in Ornament magazine. And so it is an international magazine. And so then things continued on from there. And I received many awards. It was very, very nice. And then I was published in a large book that Singer put out, Exploring the Textile Arts. Kind of an unusual way to show our items. And so you can see how heavy my applique was at the time. And then I also decorated the insides of my clothing with poetry and symbols and things like that. And so this piece here is a cape. And so that shows how detailed my applique is. And so I continued on doing wearable art and showing at the American Craft Council shows. And then this is one of my favorite ensembles. And this is when I started working with fiberglass window screen. And so then, let's see, I continued on doing my wearable art for quite a while. And then in about 2006, oh, let's see, go back to this. Find the right one. Here we go. Oh, excuse me. I'll backtrack a little bit. So of course, September 11th occurred. And in the frenzy after September 11th, I created my best known piece, which is this piece here. And the name of it is Art Washes Away from the Soul the Dust of Everyday Life. And so it features images from September 11th, the girders. This represents the papers that were flying out the window, and the American flag rising up out of the flames of the World Trade Center. And so this is my best known piece. And the first award I received was from the Palos Verdes Arts Center. And then it continued on to receive many awards. And so then Ornament magazine did a full article on me at that time that featured almost all art that was dedicated to September 11th. And so it featured the outfit that I just showed you, and then my September 11th commemorative piece. And so I had a very nice article in there. And so then I received a phone call one day, and it was from an assistant to a very wealthy woman in Manhattan. And she said that Ann Ziff had seen the article on me in Ornament magazine, and she was interested in ordering some clothes from me. So I was like, okay, this is a little weird. I've never worked through an assistant before, but she was very nice and helpful. And so I mentioned to some friends who have lived in New York or were familiar with New York, and mentioned her name. And they said, oh, she just doesn't live in New York. She basically owns New York. And so it turned out that she was the executive director of the Metropolitan Opera and also the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. So Anne basically kept my business going for about the next 5 years. I was able to create really wild evening clothes for her, and then also for some of her friends. Renee Fleming, the opera star, has worn my clothes, and also Princess Furiel of Jordan. And so during this time, however, uh, most fashion became much more casual. And so, other than Anne and a few of her friends in New York, I had very little business. And so I stopped traveling around and doing the American Craft Council shows because they are extremely expensive to participate in, and started trying to figure out something new to do that involved art and fiber. And so I started making large scale wall hangings. And so this one here, which is 9 feet tall, hung, and there are 3 of these hanging in a very nice elder care facility in Del Mar. And then here are some other of my pieces. And so when I moved back to California, I decided to apply for the La Quinta Art Show, and I was accepted right away, which I was very excited about. Let's see, are you getting any of that? So this is a screen with 3 panels. And so unfortunately, the whole show was basically a disaster. I had rented a tent because I hadn't been doing outdoor shows any longer. And so I got to the show and they hadn't set up my tent. And so the issues continued on and on. And so then during the show, I discovered that although my pieces had sold extremely well in galleries in the north and northwest and east, they really didn't work for California customers. And so I knew that, again, I was going to have to make some changes. And so I started working through these ideas. And so I started working on a Palm Springs series. And so it has the vibrant colors and silks and more of a Palm Springs look to it. And so they only had the quilt show in Palm Springs twice, but this one was in the quilt show. And they were very impressed that I was able to do the applique all the way through all the layers. And then at the same time, I was asked to do a piece specifically for the 29 Palms Chamber of Commerce. And so they wanted a desert night scene. And so this one is called The Desert Dreams in Color. And so I was living out in the high desert, and I had been doing shows in Palm Springs for quite a while with Betty, who used to run the gift shop at the art museum. And she did something called the Art of Shopping. And I was the first artist that she asked to participate in that. And so my customers were really wonderful women that were very big supporters of the Palm Springs Art Museum. And so I thought that living in Joshua Tree would be okay, but I was too far away to really have a establish relationships and have a really good business as far as clothing was concerned. Let's see, I need to backtrack a little bit. So in 2007, about that time, probably, I think 3 years before, Project Runway had started being on TV. And I was a big fan, of course. And so finally I got my courage up and drove to LA with a girlfriend and applied for Project Runway. And so I got to meet Tim Gunn, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful man. And I did very well in the interview, but I had shown them my applique pieces. And so Tim said, well, we really love your sense of style and your clothing. This one. But they said they didn't think that I would be able to complete those projects in the amount of time that they gave you. And so the next year I went back and revamped my clothing line. And so I designed clothes that were intended for Chrissy Hind of Chrissy Hind and the Pretenders and Stevie Nicks. And I called it Rock Couture. And so the colors are very dark there, so you might not be able to see them. And so they just loved the designs that I came up with. And it was a two-step process to get on the show. So this is one of the pieces here. So it's kind of a tie-dyed wool that I used. And then this piece here is a little more flamboyant, short in the front, long in the back with the cutout. And so I was told after my interview that I was moving for one of 30 people that was moving forward to the next judging. And so I had to produce a video and have it in the mail within 48 hours. And so that was one of their ideas to try and narrow things down. And so here's my photo that the Polaroid that they took of me for Project Runway. And so I completed all of that. And 2 weeks before I would have had to go to New York to start filming, they called and let me know that I was not going to be on the show. And that happened to be the season that Christian Siriano won Project Runway. And so I just tell everybody that Christian beat me out. And so he's become quite famous. And they also told me in the phone conversation that they had decided to go in a different direction. And so it's been obvious after that that the people that they choose pretty much live in the New York area and already have a very easy way of establishing themselves. Oh, let's see. I probably should have switched my camera the other direction, shouldn't I? Probably would have been better. Sorry. Okay, so about that, after that was when I realized that the expensive clothing business was not going to be working that well anymore. My clothing ranged in price from about $400 on up to $5,000. And so a few more examples. I worked with a lot with silk organza, appliquing on that. And then I also worked with a fiber artist named Doshi. And she does shibori. And then I would applique on top of the shibori. And that went very well for a while, but of course that was extremely cost prohibitive. And so that market didn't last too long. And so while living in Joshua Tree, it was quite a change for me. I had never lived in a small community before. I had always been a city girl, and I had always lived in the north with a lot of green and lakes and everything. And about 2 years into living here, I suffered from depression for the first time. And I could not figure out why. I had never had this issue before. And so I mentioned it to a friend who is a nurse, and I said, you know, the wind and everything just drives me crazy here. And she said, oh, that's a very common cause of depression. The wind, the positive ions from the wind cause extreme depression in some people. So I started researching it, and it turns out that Winston Churchill actually suffered from that depression. And so when the Mistral winds in Italy would be howling, he refused to have any meetings in Italy with the other um, country's representatives because he was so depressed from that. And so once I realized what was causing my depression, I was able to deal with it. And I started hiking and participating a lot more in the desert. And so I started to appreciate a little bit more the place that I was now living in. And so I started looking at the beauty, different sorts of beauty that came out of the desert, rather than just the very beautiful blues and greens that I was used to. And so at the same time, I had decided that I wasn't going to be making my applique clothing anymore. My hands were also suffering from it, and my neck. And so I was searching for a new technique. And so I saw needle felting machines. I had never wanted to do felting before because you have to be cold and wet, and it also is very hard on your hands. And so the needle felting machine was my answer. And so this is the machine here. And it has 5 barbed needles. And I'll do a little demonstration on that also. And so I started playing around with my leftover scraps of silk, and that's mainly how I got started. And so this is the first piece that I created. And I created this for a show that was at Joshua Tree Art Gallery that was going to be a juried show. And it was supposed to be about the environment. And so this piece shows the earth from beginning to the end. And so it's the Big Bang Theory at the top. And then at the bottom, we have abused the earth so much that it has now just become desert. And it's just draining away. as a funnel of sand. And so initially I thought, oh, this piece isn't quite good enough to enter, but I'll go ahead and enter it. And to my surprise, I received an honorable mention in the show. And so that made me convinced that I needed to pursue my needle felting more. And so because of the way I meandered into this style with the depression and trying to appreciate the beauty, I call this series Dangerous Beauty. And so my very first piece concentrated on the San Andreas Fault. And so it shows the fault, which I have slashed into the canvas, and then all the jewels that we receive from the fault. And that as environmentalists, we're trying to stitch the earth back together. And of course, it is unsuccessful. And so there are still lots of gaps and holes. And so that was my first piece. And I've continued on from that with this series. And so the Salton Sea and the desert and the different things here have really influenced my work now. So the slashing basically came about because of us stealing and taking things from the earth, especially jewels, but also the beauty of the earth, and that almost all of it is from dangerous circumstances. So this piece is called Sunset Sandstorm. This piece is completely felted, and it is called Dark Desert. And this piece is of the Salton Sea, and it shows Bombay Beach and the sea and the different shells and everything that are, and fish bones and everything that are appearing from the sea.
Laurie, could you go down, show that one again? We couldn't really
Sure.
see it. We just could see the little top of it, not the whole
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Thank you.
And then here's a larger similar piece that does not have any beading on it of the salt. And so the Salton Sea pieces were created for a show that Terry Hastings was putting together. And it was the first show, was supposed to be the first show, but then of course we had COVID. And so he wanted to show the bad part of the Salton Sea, and then also the good things that could come out of the Salton Sea. So this one is called The Vanishing Salton Sea. So the sea has completely disappeared in this situation into the desert. This one breaks from that theme a little bit. This is called Copper Mining. And it shows how copper mining rapes the earth and takes the jewels from the earth. Okay, and then this is the large piece that Ellen was talking about. Let's see if I can kind of get it. And so this piece is about 7 feet tall. And this one is called Saving the Salton Sea. And so in this one, it shows how we are trying to refresh the water, which so desperately needs to be done. But we still have these bizarre areas and idiosyncrasies that we'll have to try and preserve. So here's the Bombay Beach again. Let's see. Salvation Mountain. The mud pots. And then the housing development in the aerial views really shows as these dark but bright rectangles in the area. Let's see, getting any of that? Oh, there we go. Okay. And then the tilapia ponds become this really bizarre hot pink color, which is beautiful but frightening at the same time. And then if we're successful in replenishing the Salton Sea, then of course we have rivers that flow out of the Salton Sea, and they're meager right now, but are expanding all the time. Let's see.
Laurie, I know it's really hard without feedback, so I just want to let you know you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
That we're able to see things.
Okay, good. And so in the park, in Joshua Tree National Park, because I love water, one of my favorite places to hike to is Willow Hole. And that is along the Boy Scout Trail. It's a flat hike, but let's see, it might be 7 miles each direction. So it takes a while to get there. And so, but when you get there, there are actually willow trees. Let's see. I'm not getting that very well. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay. And all sorts of wild algae and furry stuff growing around because the water moves up and down so constantly. And then this one was from a second trip to Willow Hole. And so this time it was really crazy with just wild things growing all over the place. So I'm not able to show it very well here, but the shadow play because of the large piece being cut away is really fantastic when it's hanging on a white wall. And I still love painting, and so I'm really doing a lot of the acrylic, different techniques with acrylic paint, scraping and layering and doing different things like that. And then this is one of my most popular pieces, this triptych. And I think it's because of the blue and green colors. This is my third version that I've done of this because it sells so well at Desert Art Center. So hopefully when we reopen, I'll have that there. Okay. Oh, so my applique machine is a trusty Singer 20U industrial machine. And so that's what I do all the applique on. Oh, I skipped my best applique piece. And so this is called Desert Vista from my screen door. And so I actually appliqued on window screen. And so the first piece that I did on window screen was based on Monet's Garden at Giverny. And so that sold. And so then for the Joshua Tree National Park Expo, I created this one, which I received an award on last year. And you might wonder, why do I have two? It's one of those artistic dilemmas. I had the show dates correct, but I didn't have intake and outtake correct. So I was in two shows with the same piece. So I had to do a reasonable facsimile of the same piece and entered it and hit it in another show also. But it's good for something like this because I normally display it with the more elaborate back showing with the front swinging out, but this way you can see what the front looks like. And so this is fiberglass window screen appliqued in silk du peony, and then with bias trim. Okay. So then these are some smaller needle felted pieces that I do. And then this is very new. I had a bunch of rusted rebar circles that were on our property. And so these are the two smallest, and I have rebar circles all the way up to about 4 feet across. So these are really exciting to work with. Should I do a little felting demo, or is that too noisy, or do you want to just ask questions?
You could give it a try if you want. I'm not sure if it's too noisy or not. We'll find out.
All right. Okay.
Can you do it and hold the phone though?
I don't know. We'll see. So these are some of the felted pieces before they are, I attach them to canvas, painted canvas, so that they're easy to hang. But this is what they look like before they're attached to the canvas. And so I start with just regular wool felt. And then I order different colors of wool roving. And these are leftover pieces from silk saris. And then you can find just all sorts of, wild little yarns and stuff that add to them. So I'll do just a really quick little demo. Oh, and I had my mask prepared. So as I said, let's see, the 5 barb needles are in here, and they do have a very good finger guard for all of you who know how dangerous sewing machines can be. So you would really have to try to get your fingers in there. So I'll see if we can make this work. So I've laid out some wool roving here and some of the sari silk. And so basically what I'm doing now is abstract painting with fiber. So I'll just do this really quick because it will be noisy. So I discovered doing this, since I was having trouble with my hands, and my hands were starting to get arthritic and everything from the doing the applique, that with this I can keep my hands very nice and flat, and it doesn't require a lot of exertion that's really my joints, and I can sit up straight so it doesn't bother my neck. So, let's see. This is a new piece that I'm working on, and if anybody has any suggestions, let me know. I did long streamers of the felting, and then I felted it right onto the black. And now I'm trying to decide if it's just too dark, or if I need to do beading in there and make it, even more labor intensive. And then this piece is called The Goldfish. And for another one of Terry Hastings' shows, Alex Jilson, who is a fairly well-known poet in Palm Springs, wrote poems that we were supposed to create pieces for. And so I did kind of an abstract goldfish theme for this one. Oh, and so, let's see. Oh, it doesn't show up really well because this is black. Maybe I should get another one. So one of the issues that I always have with showing fiber art, and I'm sure many of you have run into this also, is that the curators don't really know how to display fiber art. And so for these pieces, I've come up with a method where I am actually stitching the felted piece right onto a piece of canvas that I've painted to complement the piece. And then I wire it so that they can easily hang it. And so that solved a lot of problems as far as displaying my art. Okay, I think I've covered everything. So if you have questions, that'd be great.
Laurie, do you have any of your jackets, your wearable pieces?
Well, they were the ones that I showed you. So, and then I have a couple more. So this one is one of my favorites. It hasn't fit anybody so far, but which is one of the problems with wearables, and which is why doing the kimonos is the very easiest thing to do. And so very intense colors. And so I actually made this with Ann Ziff in mine. And so it was her size and everything, but she didn't care for the color, which was unusual. She almost always bought I would just send her boxes and she would send me a check. So that was always really nice. And so I always feel that with the money that people are paying for my clothing, that the inside should look as good as the outside. So they're lined in silk and unusual fabrics.
Laurie,
Yeah.
there was a tan jacket that was up higher on the wall. It looked tan and felted.
No.
No, I thought oh, there it was.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
oh.
It was to the left of the kimono. Okay,
Not
it
that
looked felted to me. But can you show a little higher? It was the, no,
Okay,
not the streamers, but the work on the shoulders of that piece.
Oh, okay. All right. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it has kind of shawl sorts of pieces that come off of the neck, and they're all different sizes, and that represents the smoke that was filling the air.
All right. Thank you.
What was
There
the
are some
material?
questions. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's some questions in the chat that I could read out.
Okay.
A couple from Martha Lumian asked, your willow pieces are so interesting. The backgrounds are painted. Is there any felting on those?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what, okay, so yes. Yeah, so this is all felted here. So I cut away part of the canvas. So I gesso the front and the back of the canvas, and I painted black inside just in case, anything shows through. And then I cut away and then I start painting. So this is, kind of a greenish water theme because Willow Hole is kind of brackish And then, there are lots of bugs going through and everything. And so, yes, so all of these little pieces are felted. And then I stitch through the canvas with embroidery floss to hold them in place.
Okay, and then, well, one she asked, Martha also asked, how do you attach the canvas pieces to the canvas? But I think you showed us that.
Okay.
And she also wanted to know what took you initially to the high desert.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been showing in Palm Springs for a long time, and so I was kind of familiar with the area, and we come to Joshua Tree, and my husband is a motorcycle fanatic. And I'm just going to open the door. He would be mad if he knew that I really showed you this. So this is my husband's studio. So nothing but motorcycles and machinery to make motorcycle parts. So that's what he does while I'm working. And so he's able to ride his motorcycle all over the place here. There's lots of dirt biking, and he doesn't have to go through freeways to get to good motorcycle riding. And then we also moved back to California because my husband's daughter started having children. And so, of course, the grandchildren brought us back. But they don't live out here. They live about 2 hours away over in San Marcos.
Well, grandchildren are always a good reason.
Right.
Okay, I have just a couple other things. First of all, Ellen sent me some pictures of your pieces,
Okay,
which
good.
I could share on the
All right.
screen, and then you could you actually had showed them, but this way they'll be stable and you won't have to hold the camera, and you can do details. So I'll do that in 1 second. But also, Kat was saying that the felting machine doesn't use thread. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, it's just
Okay.
the 5 barb needles that meld the fabric together.
Okay.
The
Okay, so I
wool.
have 3 or 4.
And one
pictures.
last comment,
Sure.
comment to Laurie. I put this into everyone. Laurie, I just want to thank you for mentioning all your business pivoting and how you actually worked your very interesting and very enlightening. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we won't be able to see you. You'll just see the pictures, okay?
Okay.
And but you can talk over them, okay?
All right. Okay.
Well, there's the dog again. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so that's the one that I was trying to show you. That's called Dusk at Willow Hole. And so in the photo, then you can see the background, the wall coming through, and the nice shadows that I achieved with the felted pieces. And so that is acrylic paint that I've layered and scraped and cut through the canvas, and then mending it back together with the different kinds of algae and scum that flows.
Okay.
And that one is Sunset Sandstorm. And so in the lower right, in the sand area of the painting, I've slashed through, and all the jewels from the felt, from the fault, are rising up out of the desert. And so there is felting underneath the different jewels there.
Okay.
And then that sea piece, Saving the Salton Sea. And so there you can see me. I'm just over 5 feet tall, and then so it's about 7 feet tall. And then that's my Desert Vista from my screen door, which won the award at the Joshua Tree National Park Expo last year. And so that's fiberglass window screen kimono appliqued with silk du peony.
So this black part is the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it.
Okay.
Just 1 second.
Lori,
We could-
I had another question.
Okay.
When you were talking about the knee or the felting machine, you said you felted on a canvas. Were you actually felting onto artist canvas there, or were you just using that term generically?
Probably generically. No. Yeah. I'm felting onto wool felt.
Okay, great. Okay, that
I-
threw me for a loop because I didn't think those needles would go through canvas, and
Right.
I wondered
Yeah.
how you did that.
And then I attach it to canvas when the piece is finished.
Gotcha.
And by attaching it, you're stitching it? Are you hand stitching it onto the canvas?
Yes. So I'll see if I can get a decent. Can you see the gold embroidery floss
Mhm.
there? Behind the wood?
Yeah, I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So here, this is where you can see my knots up here in the corner there.
Yep.
Okay, and then I wire it for hanging.
Carol Goldsmith wants to know, how do you applicate to the screen?
It's just like basically anything else. Yeah, so I actually when I applique, I put Wonder Under onto my silk du peony and then cut out my shape. And then this is a really powerful machine. So I don't know if I'd recommend doing it, just with your regular sewing machine, but yeah, I don't have any problem at all using my industrial machine to applique through the window screen.
May I chip in 2 cents here? I've
Sure.
ruined a couple of machines doing something like that, not on screen, but on heavy material. And so industrial
Yes.
machines are the way to go.
Yes, and I've only had to bring this machine, well, I had him come out, obviously. I've only had to have it repaired one time, and it was because I had allowed the bobbin to get tangled up. So it was my fault. It wasn't any fault of the machine. So as long as you clean it and oil it on a regular basis, you won't have any problem with the machine. Aren't that expensive either. And obviously this is a very old one, and it just keeps going. Then I have this ancient Schafer that I'm probably going to get rid of. I'm not using it very much anymore. And this was originally a treadle, and it still has the book to go with it.
Wow.
And so then at some point in time, somebody attached it to an industrial machine. So I used that one for straight stitch when I had my clothing
That's cute as a
business.
button. Well, Lori, if there aren't any more questions, I just want to say thank you very much. That was a beautiful tour of a beautiful studio with beautiful work in it. And you held up well under the stress of our not knowing what was quite going on.
Right?
So thanks so much.
Well, I was hoping I wouldn't be embarrassing myself at another Zoom meeting after the Desert Arts Center one, where I thought I had things under control, but I didn't. And so, yeah, I do have an iPad now, but we're having trouble getting everything set up. So that wasn't quite ready yet. Oh, and as you can see, Gustav Klimt is like my favorite artist. So I have all sorts of prints of his. Let me see if I can find the one piece that is really very Gustav looking.
Your art does remind me of him, especially the swirling pieces.
Right. Thought I had one in here. Ah, there it is. Okay. So this one's called A Kiss for Gustav.
Mm,
Gorgeous.
it's really beautiful. Your work is just stunning, Laurie. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope everybody can come out to the high desert and visit sometime. I need to have another studio sale, and I have things to sell still.
Well, do let us know if you're going to have something like that, if we are ever
I
able to
will.
get out again.
And
Okay.
don't forget, you can see Laurie's work at the Desert Art Center, and we're planning on reopening December 4th.
Okay,
Wow.
good. All right.
And
Oh,
how-
and the show at 29 Palms did end on
Mm,
Sunday. So
mm.
that's why I was able to show all my pieces here. So now they're preparing for the Joshua Tree National Park Expo, and which is a very nice storied show. So I do have a piece in it this year also.
Okay, thank you very much, Laurie.